I work at a call center. I work the graveyard shift, the night shift at the call center. Now, it might not be the best job, but the amount I was getting paid was enough for me to get on with the job. There weren't many people working the graveyard shift, so the office almost seemed empty, and there was this weird sense of freedom that was there. The cafeteria was accessible, and we did not need to be lining up for a coffee. The shift was pretty boring, and I was just going through the job without any interesting happening there. Even the coworkers that I had were pretty boring. They were so immersed in work that nobody really cared to take a break and relax. And I was the only one who was pretty psyched all over the place, and the only place that I found the entertainment in the calls that came in. And I even tried to chat up with the people that would call me. I would often have conversations with the customers on the personal level, and it turned out to be beneficial for me since I was pitching in more sales and getting the most out of the products, and in return, my incentives were increased and I was making more money. The shift that seemed to be boring was now becoming interesting, and then one day, I received a call that would change everything. I had no idea what impact that phone call would have on me. It was a Monday night, and as anyone working will tell you, Mondays are mundane. I went into the office knowing that today might be just a boring day. It started out as the boring day. Nothing really was interesting, and even the people that I was on call were not interesting in conversation, and they were not to be blamed. It was the Monday. Monday is boring. I started the calls, and after 60 calls, I decided to take a coffee break. And after taking a coffee break, I decided to go on back at calling. But then, just 20 minutes after the break, suddenly there was a phone call on my set. It kind of took me off guard because firstly, I hadn't given the number to anyone, and secondly, we cannot receive calls on that device. So yes, I was freaking out about the whole thing. At first I thought that maybe it is the corporate probably warning me to not chat up customers, so I let it ring. There was no way I was going to pick up that phone. But it started back again. This time, I decided to pick up to not get into further problems. And then I picked it up. I was relieved that it wasn't the corporate. It was some woman, but the spooky part was that the woman was crying. There was gentle sobbing in there, and the woman was calling for help. So while on one hand, I was relieved that it wasn't the corporate, I was also freaking out about what the call was. And as I was about to ask away questions, the line disconnected. It freaked me out. I tried logging into the call chart to find out the ID on the caller, but there was nothing. And I wondered who would do such things. And there was this thought that what if it was just a prank call? And I thought about it and I just let it slide. But then, when it was just 2 hours in finishing my shift, the call came in again. And all the girl did was ask for help. And as I tried talking to her, it disconnected again. And it was all silent for a while. And then right when I was ready to leave, the ring came back, but this time I ignored it because somehow I thought it was just some idiot who was trying to prank me. I went back to my place and I decided to straight away doze off. But then the call came in on my mobile. I wasn't expecting any call. There was nothing that could have prepared me for this call. I picked up the phone and it was the same woman from work. She called in and was sobbing, and this time she spoke. And she said, "Is there anyone listening to this call? Please, is there anyone?" And as I said, I shouted on the phone, "Yes, I am here. Yes, talk. Why don't you talk?" I was annoyed by the constant calls, so I got annoyed and I had a breakdown. And the girl said, "Please help me. This man. I've been here for 10 years. This man." I asked her, "What man? What man?" And she said, "There's an oak tree, yellow mailbox, badly maintained rose bushes, a bald man." And I said, "These are just random words. What are you trying to say?" And she said, "You are near, and I can hear you." And I was just more puzzled than ever. And I tried looking on the internet, but all these things were just random words, and making sense of them was not very easy without any context. So I just slept, knowing that there isn't much I can do. The phone did not ring the whole morning and the afternoon. And then the moment the night came in, it started ringing. And the next she said, "Red light, bus 30, red light, bus 30. Help, it's been 10 years. And I wondered what she was talking about. When I was about to leave the place, the HR told me that my shift has been changed from night to day, and I was so relieved. When I was on my way to the home, I saw the red light, and it reminded me of one of the clues the women gave me. I slept, put my phone on silent. I did not want to disturb myself with constant calls and hints of that woman, so I just slept. Then I woke up and realized that I had to go to the office. It was day, and I was late. It was the first time that I was getting out and catching a bus in daytime. And as I got out and went to the station to catch the bus, and when I boarded the bus, I realized I was on the bus 30. I had no idea that I was on it. And then as the bus started moving, I remember seeing the oak tree. And suddenly, all the things came to me, all the clues that the woman was giving. And then there was the house with the yellow mailbox, and I quickly realized what was going on. I asked for an emergency stop and stepped off the bus. I was standing right in front of all the clues that the woman on the phone gave me. And then there was this badly maintained rose bush. And then there was the final piece coming himself my way. As I stood in front of his house, a man came and said, "Can I help you?" And I looked at him. And I knew if I confronted him, he would realize I was onto him. So I asked him for directions instead, and then he pointed me to the way that I already knew, and the first thing I did was call in police and inspect. I waited for them, and decided to raid in with them after, and turns out the man had been abducting girls and molesting them and murdering them. He was a sick serial killer, and he even had girls kidnapped, and I asked them if they found the girl he kidnapped 10 years ago. And then what the police told me shook me. The officer said, "The girl you are referring to is Michelle. She was the first girl she kidnapped, and sadly, she was the first victim he had. And her remains were found in his closet. Literal closet. But how did you know her?" And I replied in all the shock that I was feeling, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Hey guys. Thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. This story happened around 4 years ago. Back when I was 18 and had just graduated high school, I decided to volunteer for a month in Southern Asia country before my university starts. Since volunteering was something I always wanted to do, I managed to find a place to volunteer at and was supposed to live for the first week with family friends. Then I started living at my workplace. Thing is, my workplace couldn't house me due to construction and having another female volunteer coming soon. So I had to find a hotel to stay at, and that was probably my biggest mistake. I went on the internet and started looking for a hostel. Sure enough, I found one in the center of the city in a relatively safe area. Also, the hostel had many great reviews from foreigners, so I thought it was safe. I visited the hostel and was greeted by Jin Hee, was the nephew of the owner and was responsible for greeting foreigners and showing them around. Jin was in his mid-20s, an average-looking dude, probably around 5'8". I'm 6'3", which will be important later after I make the arrangements for my stay there and agree to come the next day, and invites me to go with him on a walk to show me around the neighborhood, which I agree to. During our walk, he tells me about himself. He lived in the UK for a bit, tells me about his family, and asks me if I smoke. Back when I was a cool kid fresh out of high school, so I aesthetically told him yes, since I was actually trying to get some blood but didn't know how he told me he can get it. And when I come tomorrow, we'll have some for me. The next day I go to the hospital and he tells me that he couldn't get it, so I have to go with him to his friend's George's to get it. And in hindsight, that was a big red flag, but I was a dumb kid who really wanted to smoke. So of course I said yes. George almost looked like a cartoon villain. All his facial features were sharp and narrow and had the little Van Dyke beard to go with it. We all get into the tuk-tuk and drove to the slums of the city to meet the dealer. I think the area was called when not the Moolah, not sure. Anyways, we get the bud and they tell me where you're making a stop at George's house and smoking there for a bit fine with me. I had no reason to suspect them, since they were nice and polite to me. We reached his house, still within the slum area. It was a small room with a bed and 3 chairs, nothing else. No tables or decor or anything. I sat on the chair, Jen sat on my right, and George sat on the bed rolling out some joints for us. We started smoking and talking. They started asking me about why I'm here, how old I am, and stuff like that. Suddenly, it started becoming a little too personal, asking me what my parents do for a living, how much they make, and the one that really caught my attention. Who are the people you live with? The family friends? And do they know where you are and they're going to worry about you if you don't call them soon, or something to that effect? I was stoned by then, but the moment they said that, I started sobering up quick and realizing that I'm in a messed up situation. I told them that I'm supposed to call in a few hours and that they know which hostel I'm staying at. Suddenly, another guy came and just stood at the doorway, completely blocking it. He was about my height, but much bigger in size than me. I was trapped between them and essentially had nowhere to go. Luckily, they couldn't do anything to me yet since I told them I'm supposed to make a phone call to my family friends. Starting to get very nervous and anxious, I tell them I'm too baked and can't even move or smoke. So kept passing up on my turn to smoke. I just lay there, acting as if though I'm tired in my mind. They started speaking in their native language, and it was clear to me that they were actually talking about me. Jen told them about my electronics I had and that I had paid my full stay in cash. Now George, God bless his soul, thought I wasn't aware of my surroundings. So in perfect English, Jen told me he doesn't speak English. He started mocking me, kept saying nice phone, and asked me if I know how to swim. I just looked at him and smiled and told them it's time to go, because I was starting to get tired. We walked out and I told them I needed to go to the market real fast and if they needed anything, and they kept telling me that they'll get me whatever I want themselves. But I insisted that I wanted to go and that they should send one of them with me. And they sent the big guy. Now the market was across the street from a bus station, and that bus doesn't stop at the station. They just slowed down and you hop in and hop out. So now was my chance. I waited until I saw the bus approaching, sprinted like my life depended on it. And it did, and I hopped in. They were screaming at me to come back and started running after the bus, and at one point, I even heard one of them scream that you're lucky. The moment the bus reached the neighborhood of the family friends, I hopped out and walked around the neighborhood in the morning. I went to work and told them that it Tuk had tried to kidnap me. So they escorted me to the hostel where I took my belongings and work allowed me to stay with them. Thank God. When I told my family friends about what happened, they told me it's a common scam here and that they were planning to steal my belongings and dump me in the river when they left the house. And that's where they asked if I knew how to swim and if someone was expecting me. Born on March 23rd at 1987 in Transbog, Sweden, Kim Isabel Wahl dreamed of a career in journalism. Later in life, that dream would be realized when she was accepted to study international relations at the London School of Economics, with her career prospects strengthened after she went on to study journalism and international relations at Columbia University in New York City. Kim returned to Denmark with one of the finest journalistic credentials in the world, setting in the capital of Copenhagen with her boyfriend Ola Stober. It was there that she began to write articles for some of the most popular news outlets in the world, such as The Guardian and The New York Times, Vice, and Time magazine, and went on to win the Hand-Sewn Meat Prize for Best Digital Reportage in March of 2016. She was a woman destined to reach the very top of the journalistic career ladder, but on August 10th of 2017, she received a death message that kicked off a chain of events that would ultimately end in her untimely death. The text was from Danish entrepreneur of James Madison, a man known for the manufacturing of submarines. Kim had requested an interview with Peter earlier that year, and the opening text was Madsen accepting the request. However, there was one special caveat. The interview would have to take place aboard his personal midget submarine, the US-3 Nautilus. Kim agreed to his terms, arranging a 2-hour interview beneath the Baltic Sea that would take place at around 7 p.m. Kim then met with Madsen at the arranged time. They boarded the Nautilus, and then set off to conduct the interview. Madsen's staff expected his return at around 9:30 p.m. that evening, yet when the submarine failed to resurface when expected, both Madsen's staff and Kim's loved ones begged the local police to launch a rescue operation. Half a dozen search and rescue teams from a number of different services pulled the resources, and shortly after 10:30 a.m. the following morning, the Nautilus was sighted just southeast of the Drunk-then Lighthouse and Cube Bay. Peter Madsen was rescued and was found to be in fairly good health. Kim Wall, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found, and Peter was asked where Kim was. He was apparently devastated to inform them that she passed away from injuries resulting from a catastrophic mechanical failure. Danish police promptly arrested him on charges of negligent manslaughter, and during his interview, Madsen admitted that he'd found her death so distressing that he rejected her body from the submarine and that she was probably still floating in the Baltic Sea. At first, as tragic as it was, Madsen's story seemed to check out. But all that changed when a proper analysis of the submarine was conducted. The mechanical engineers who sought to identify the reason behind the mechanical failure basically failed to find one. To them, not only could they not understand how someone had died from the existing damage, but it almost looked like someone was deliberately trying to sabotage the submarine from the inside whilst it was in water. When this hypothesis was presented to Madsen, and despite overwhelming incidents to the contrary, he flatly denied having deliberately scuttled his own $200,000 submarine. And so, police were faced with two key questions. Why would a man destroy such an expensive piece of personal property? And where was Kim Wall's body? In the end, the answer to both questions would wash up on the beach southwest of Oma 11 days after she'd first disappeared. On the morning of August 21, 2017, a passing cyclist was horrified to discover a dismembered human torso washed up on the beach. A post-mortem found 15 stab wounds, mostly in the region of the cadavers growing on the team of Swedish divers later recovered to plastic bags nearby, each containing a head, a pair of legs, some clothes, and a blood-stained knife. A short time after that, a saw was found washed up on the same stretch of beach, only adding to the sinister implications. At first, the police didn't actually expect the body to be Kim's, since Madsen had already stated that he dropped her body into the water untouched. But he completely failed to mention that he'd taken the time to dismember her before tossing the pieces into the sea. At a September 5th court hearing, Madsen asserted that Kim had died after being struck on the head by a faulty latch cover and that the whole thing was simply a horrible accident. If Madsen was unaware that the Danish police had not only seized in a sense his personal computer, but they'd also been in touch with several former girlfriends, some of whom had incriminating testimonies to share with the court. Police stated that while persecuting the files and folders of Madsen's hard drive, they found a number of disturbingly graphic snuff films, some of which include death by decapitation. His former lawyers then testified the maximum is extremely violent in the bedroom, and they had personally witnessed him gaining gratification from watching excruciating videos. But without a doubt, the worst piece of evidence presented was the fact that Kim was underwater. The same she had been wearing the night she died was found secretly among Madsen's possessions. Madsen had absolutely no explanation for why this was the case, and the case became destined to go to trial. And despite Madsen's claim that Kim had died as a result of massive brain trauma, the post-mortem performed on her severed head found no evidence of damage from a blunt object. Madsen then changed his story, admitting to having dismembered her, but only after she died as a result of a horrible accident. He went on to claim that she could have been poisoned by a poisonous gas leak, but again, the post-mortem found no traces of exhaust gases in her lungs. In early 2018, Madsen was officially charged with several offenses, including murder, decent handling of a corpse, and assault. It was also implied that Madison had extensively tortured Kim before delivering the final blow, and there was a great deal of evidence to support this claim. So much so that on April 25th, Peter Madison was convicted of all 3 charges and sentenced to life imprisonment. Peter maintained his innocence until September of 2020, when the documentary was released in which he fully admitted to having murdered Ken Wall. But less than a month later, Madison briefly escaped from prison by threatening a prison psychologist with a fake pistol and bomb belt. However, on the objects were determined to be a mere ruse. Madsen was surrounded and rearrested just 500 meters from the prison walls. Friends and colleagues over the world were stunned to hear of Kim's horrific murder, and as the extent of Madison's evil came to light, the world was disgusted by both his deviancy and his attempts to escape justice. Following her death, Kim's friends and family started the Kim Guam Memorial Fund, a foundation designated to fund female reporters who cover stories of cultural value. And in October of 2017, Kim was posthumously nominated for Prix Europa's Outstanding Achievement Award. The journalist community felt it was the least they could do to honor a woman willing to take risks to get the truth, ensuring that long after her murder was forgotten, Kim would be fondly remembered by those who wish to follow in her footsteps. Good Morning America was a popular show on the American national television and was hosted by really famous people. This show was actually the replacement of the show called Good Day America, a show that only taped 1 episode because it was abrupted by an incident never before filmed on live camera. Very handful of people were actually able to catch a glimpse of the show that aired years ago now. It all started at early 8 in the morning when one of the reporters from the Good Day America got a lead on a refreshing story that was called in to report it. It was Claire Savant who was sent to report the story. It was Claire's first day at the job, and she was excited to be able to cover a fresh lead on the first day of her job, and it boosted her confidence. Claire left for reporting the story at 8, and she received the address of the place via text. She was bold, and she was very much in command of the story, but she didn't know what to expect. But since it was a morning show, she wasn't really worried about it. Claire arrived at the place mentioned in the text. It was a cafe at the corner of the 7th Street, but she has no idea who called her. She was just told to hold the rose and sit at the table, so she did that. She was there for about an hour and was getting impatient, and decided to leave since the leads seemed to be bogus. As she got up, the person sitting behind her was shot. She was shocked, but she alerted the cameraman and they started reporting. "I am the Doorman Cafe in 7th Street, and a man has just been shot right here. And I was sitting right in front of that table, and as soon as I got up, the bullet probably pierced through the window and hit the man sitting right behind at that table." She reported for a while, and then stopped when the police arrived. They investigated her and let her go. She received another text. It was the same person, and the text said, "At Cafe Rosie on Broadway and 5th. She and her team quickly started their Jeep and arrived as soon as possible. And then it was the same there. There was a rose waiting for her at the table, and she was sitting. She got another text that said, 'Tell your friend to point the camera at right.' She informed the cameraman about the text, and soon as he shifted the focus of the camera to the right, bang, loud noise, and a bullet coming right through the window, piercing it and hitting the woman sitting in the right. And she started her reporting as the camera was rolling. She was in shock after realizing that she is connected to these things, but she never disclosed it. She received another text, and it said, 'Seems like you're enjoying all the leads. I will give you one.' As she was waiting for the lead, the show was stopped. It was put on halt, and the show just saw a live murder, and it was not good for the rating points for a morning show, so the show was taped, but was never aired. Claire messaged the person back. The show was canceled. She received a text an hour later, at Café DuPont. She ditched the team and went to the Café DuPont, waiting for this mystery murder. Claire became a celebrity reporter on the very first day of her work. Everyone was recognizing her and tried to console her. But she was more than a reporter in crisis. She was the crisis itself. As I entered the cafe, I hugged her. There was a distant smell of gunpowder on me, but Claire already brought me a new shirt.